All right, last week we were dealing with ionic compounds. Ionic compounds are between metals and nonmetals. This week we're going to be doing covalent compounds. That's going to be our nonmetal nonmetals. So what we have here is in the orange color, or as I was discussing with Zach, we felt it was more of a tangerine. These are our nonmetals, so everything to the right of the staircase. We need to make sure that we know what those are, and when they interact with each other, we need to use the covalent rules. Those are the rules that I'm getting ready to explain today. All right, when we're doing covalent compounds, what we're going to do is we're going to have prefixes on these. Some get prefixes, some don't. We'll explain that when we do the actual rules. So when we look through here, these are the prefixes you have to know. Okay, so one is mono. You'll see mono quite a bit, so just be familiar with it. Okay, 2 is di, 3 is tri, 4 tetra, 5 penta, 6 hexa, 7 hepta, 8 octa, and 9 nona. So make sure you get these written down because you will be using them quite a bit through the next few days and throughout the rest of the year. We'll be moving on to our next section now. All right, we're going to be doing covalent compounds. The first thing we want to do is go name to formula. Now, just prior to this, when I was talking about the beginning about what a covalent compound is, just a reminder, we're just going to be using the non-metals in this portion of the naming. So anything that's on the left-hand side of the staircase, don't even mess with that. We're not doing those right now. That's ionic compound. That gets ionic rules. Okay, so we're going to go from name to formula. Now, our first rule is we are going to write most like metal first. Now, what do I mean most like metal? Because when I have a metal, I actually write the metal first. But the most like metal is going to be the one that's closest to the metal side on the periodic table. So if it's closer to the left-hand side, we're going to consider that to be our metal for this. Now, I need to write it with the prefix. Okay. So I'm going to use my prefix that came from my name. Now, our prefixes I went over at the very beginning, and you need to have that written down in your notes. Make sure you know all 10 prefixes, or all 9 prefixes, and we'll use those quite frequently. So our prefixes, we need to take our number from prefix and we need to put that with the element. Okay, so I'll show you some examples here in just a little bit, but our prefix, if I have mono, it's 1. I don't need to write 1. If it's di, it's 2, so on and so forth. All right, now the next one, I need to write least like metal. And then when I do that, I am also going to use my number from my prefix. Okay? And that will always follow the element. It'll always be on the bottom, just like what we've been used to doing with the ionic compounds. So here comes some examples. So here's our examples for our names, and we're getting ready to go over to our formula. So let's go one at a time and figure out, using our rules, what these things are. Okay, carbon monoxide. Okay, my first rule is to name the one most like a metal. Okay, carbon is closer to the left side, so that's why it goes first. So I'm going to write my symbol for that. Okay, the symbol for carbon is C. Okay, then I'm going to write my symbol for the next one, monoxide. Okay, my thing is going to be oxide, oxygen. So O. Now, how many oxygens do I have? Well, I have the prefix mon, or mono. The 2 O's in oxygen and mono, one of them cancels out. So this is the prefix for 1, so I have 1 oxygen. So that particular problem right there is done when I just write CO. Okay, the second one, trinitrogen pentabromide. Okay, I write my first name, which is my most like metal, and that's nitrogen. The prefix tri is going to indicate that I have 3 of them. I write my next element, which is bromide. Okay, when we look at our periodic table, we know that bromine is Br. Using my prefixes, I see penta. Penta is going to be 5 down in our list. So that means I have 5 of those. So my formula for trinitrogen pentabromide is N3Br5. All right, the last one, hexasulfur octaiodide. It's a fun word to say. I've got sulfur. Sulfur is S. Okay, hexa. Okay, hexa is one of those ones because you're like, is it hexa or is it hepta? Okay, a hexagon, 6 sides. Hexa for our prefixes is going to be 6. Okay, octaiodide. Iodide is my element. So I've got iodine. How many do I have? Well, I've got octa. Octagon, 8 sides, octopus, 8 legs. I'll fix that 8 a little bit. And those are our examples for going from name into formula. All right, now we need to go from formula to name. Okay, again, it's going to be a little bit quicker than the ionic one. We don't have as many rules to follow. Okay, so just like before, we want to write most like metal first. Okay, so that's going to always be our theme, is if it's most like a metal, it's going to go first. All right, now, this one's got an if with it though. If, let's bold that a little bit, let's put some emphasis on it. If we have more than one, I want to underline that too. If more than one use prefix. So what do I mean by that? If more than one. If I have the first element having actually a number behind it that's bigger than 1, I have to use a prefix. If the number up front is just 1, I don't need to use a prefix. So our examples before, we had carbon monoxide. I only had 1 carbon. Since I only had 1 carbon, I didn't need to use a prefix. I wouldn't say monocarbon monoxide. That would just be weird. Okay, so if I only have 1, I don't need a prefix. But if more than 1, use prefix. Okay, next rule. I want to write the one that's least like the metal second. Okay, so this is the one that again is further away from the metals on the periodic table. Now, even more emphasis on this one. Okay, we had emphasis here on the if. Now this one, big time emphasis. I'm going to capital it all. Always. I want to run out of marker here, I think. Always. Use prefix. So remember, these are the prefixes that we get at the very beginning of the video. I go over all the prefixes that you need to know. So these rules, again, much shorter than the ionic compounds. But once we go through the ionic and understand these ought to be a piece of cake. Our examples from symbols to names. Now I've got 3 different examples, just like we did on the previous section. So let's go through these really quick. We're going to use our rules. So make sure when you write those down and we work the examples, you're setting it up one step at a time. Okay, so my first one is write the one most like a metal. Okay, phosphorus is closer to the left than oxygen is. Okay, at least it's closer to the stair step. So I'm just going to write it first. It's phosphorus. Okay, now how many phosphoruses do I have? I have 1. So if I only have 1, I don't need to use a prefix. Okay, my next one is an oxide. Now, how many do I have? I have 5. So my prefix for 5, looking down my list, I see is penta. Now, this is going to cause a little bit of confusion, and I'm okay with it as far as where we're at. Eventually we'll get to the point to where we'll start correcting these mistakes because they just sound weird. When I have penta and oxide together, sometimes when you have 2 vowels butt together, you drop off one of the vowels. So what it would be here is not pentaoxide, it would just be pentoxide. Okay, so those are just things that we're going to see. If you wrote pentaoxide, it's probably going to be okay for what we're dealing with. Okay, the next one is CCl4. Okay, another one that just has 1 at the beginning, so I don't need a prefix. It's carbon. Okay, it's attached to a chlorine, not just 1 chlorine, but 4 chlorines. So I've got 4 here, so that is tetra. Okay, here's how I always remember, because I'm a nerd, I'm a dorky guy. Okay, Tetris. If you ever played the game Tetris, it's got 4 levels. As soon as you get 4 levels, it blows up. Every little block has 4 pieces. I know some of you are sitting at home, you're like, I've played Tetris before. I've never seen that before. Mind blown. It's amazing. So tetra is our 4. It's not quad. It's nothing weird like that. It's tetra. Okay, so tetra what? Tetrachloride. Now, I don't think I put that in your rules. Make sure you put that in your rules because I didn't put that in there. We still are going to change the ending to IDE. Okay, so when we put the one that's least like a metal, we still write "ide," just like we did with ionics. Okay, so the next one is going to be nitrogen. Now this one, though, I actually have more than one, so I have to use that if statement. If more than one, write with prefix. So this one is dinitrogen. And I have 7 fluorides. Okay, my 7 is my hepta, one I didn't use before. Heptafluoride. And once again, I've changed the ending to IDE. Okay, so I hope this is going to be helpful. This week we'll be working on the covalents. We'll put them both together. We'll mix and match. You'll have to distinguish if it's an ionic or if it's a covalent. Okay, you will have a quiz this week over these. I will send out more information on something that may help you out on this quiz in the next couple days.